So if you're selling a home, I'm sure you may be wondering, what are my closing costs to sell my home? Well, the good news is you've come to the right place. So today's video will address the two categories related to the costs of selling a home, which are the costs associated with preparing your home for sale and the costs associated with closing the transaction. And of course, once we close escrow, we often get that seller call. Show me the money! Show me the money! And yes, we will show you the money. Hello, I'm Harold Powell, your local realtor with RE/MAX Gold Coast Realty. And if you want to stay up to date on all things real estate in Ventura, then I suggest you hit the subscribe and the little bell icon so that you're notified about future content. So let's discuss the costs associated with preparing your home for sale. Number one is inspections and repairs. It's highly likely that your buyer will order a home inspection, which will unearth any repairs that you may have neglected or just overlooked. Now, to get a handle on potential repairs, I'd highly recommend watching my video on how to prepare for the home inspection. Otherwise, if there are obvious issues that you've been ignoring, you may want to have those fixed prior to listing. The other inspections that are typically done up front are the termite inspection and the sewer lateral inspection, which is a point of sale requirement for the city of Ventura and Ojai. It's very likely that a buyer will ask for Section 1 repairs, which includes termite and drywall issues. By doing this, I've been able to save actually a homeowner thousands of dollars by addressing some of those issues up front. Like, for example, take a backyard wood-covered patio deck that has considerable wood damage. It may cost $8,000 to $10,000 to repair or replace the damaged wood. Oftentimes, it's just better to remove the damaged wood patio for a few $100s, since having or not having the covered patio will not substantially change the value to a buyer. Next is the sewer lateral inspection, which is again a point of sale item for homes in Ventura and again Ojai. The inspection will check for the sewer connection from your house to the city connection in the street. And the cost of the inspection typically is around $200, $250. The big cost is if there are deficiencies in the line or if the line needs to be replaced, which can run a few $1,000s. So it's good to know if you have this cost up front. Additionally, if you are on a septic system, then you want to get a septic inspection up front for the same reason. We want to know that the system is checked out and running properly when you do have septic. The other items associated with preparing your home for sale are going to be painting, cleaning, and possible staging. I suggest watching my video on how to add value to your home before selling. Now, there may be things that you just don't want to have to tackle, and you may want to just set aside some money to make repairs or a price adjustment to compensate for some of those items. Understand you don't need to fix everything, and while no home is perfect, understanding what is reasonable will help you navigate a successful transaction. And yes, I do have a video that is called Request for Repair, if you're interested. Okay, so let's go to category number two, the seller closing costs associated with closing the sale. Now, some of your closing costs to sell your home will be based on the price and other are flat fees. So let's jump into number one, your loan payoff. If you have a loan on your property, then this is typically the largest seller expense. There are some costs associated with the payoff. Now, most loans don't have a prepayment penalty, but if so, you'll need to contact your lender for an estimate associated with the prepayment penalty. The other two fees associated with your loan payoff that will be on the net sheet are the seller's demand and the deed of reconveyance. Every lender charges what is called a lender's demand, which is the payoff amount that is requested by escrow prior to closing. Now, this is a flat fee that ranges from $75 to $100. If you have two loans, you'll actually have two lender payoff fees. Additionally, escrow charges a reconveyance fee, which confirms and records that your loan has been paid off from the sale of the property. Number two, property taxes. The seller is responsible for property taxes up until the closing date. If your property taxes are prepaid, then you'll receive a prorated credit from escrow for any amount that was paid beyond the date of closing. If you have an in-pound account, then you will likely receive a surplus check from the lender a couple weeks after the close of escrow. Number 3 is real estate commissions. Now, unless otherwise negotiated, real estate commissions are entirely the responsibility of the seller. The commission will be set with your listing agent prior to listing the home. Commission is generally a percentage of the sale price that is split between the selling and the buyer's brokerage. The commission will actually depend on the services rendered to prepare and market the property. The next set of fees will be designated in the offer on the property. You'll actually find the allocation of costs on page 3 of 16 of the current purchase agreement, which we'll turn to right now. Here's a typical or customary allocation, what that actually looks like. The seller is expected to pay for the natural hazards disclosure. The seller is responsible for installing smoke alarms, CO detectors, water heater bracing. You can see the point of sale inspection, reports, and remedial actions are again the seller's responsibility. Escrow fee is split 50-50. Owner's title, policy, insurance, and county transfer tax are all seller-related costs. Now, if there is an HOA, the seller pays the documents and transfer fee. The home warranty actually is a negotiable item, and there's no hard rule except oftentimes a seller will provide for a 1-year protection policy. Sometimes a buyer will ask for additional reports such as termite, or if the property was on septic, you would have a request for the septic inspection. Now, here's a quick explanation of what these items actually are. The natural hazard zone disclosure is required by the state of California. The seller and brokers are legally required to disclose to the buyer if the property lies within mapped hazard areas. Hazard areas would be things like flood zone, earthquake, seismic activity, and fire zones. The government point of sale inspection, reports, and corrective remedial actions is a seller responsibility. Now, most cities charge a city report fee, which is part of this, which gives the buyer the property history of all the permits filed or even open permits on the subject property. This is typically a flat fee that will vary from city to city, typically less than $100. This next point of sale item, which is mentioned in preparing your home for sale, is the sewer lateral inspection. For homes older than 10 years in Ventura and Ojai. This doesn't apply to condos or townhomes. Now, if there are deficiencies found in the line, then the deficiency will need to be remediated prior to close. Next, the escrow fee is usually split again between buyer and seller. The escrow company is charged with being responsible for preparing the deed or other documents related to escrow to ensure all aspects of the property agreement have been met. They will also oversee transfer of funds to everyone involved once the transaction has been finalized. Next, title insurance. Sellers should expect to pay for what's called an owner's policy for title insurance. This ensures that the buyer receives clear title at the close of escrow, and before issuing the title insurance policy, the title companies will check for defects in title by examining their database of property information and public records, including deeds, mortgages, wills, divorce decrees, court judgments, tax records, liens, encumbrances, bail bonds, and maps. This ensures that the buyer will have clear marketable title to the property for as long as they own it, and the benefit to the seller is they ensure that all mortgages and liens will be paid off at the close of escrow. Now, the home warranty is a negotiable item that either buyer or seller can pay. It does give a concerned buyer the peace of mind knowing that a number of items such as the furnace, water heater, appliances will be covered if something breaks down after escrow closes. HOA docs, transfer fee, and assessments. So if your property is governed by an HOA, then the seller will be responsible for paying for the HOA documents, which includes the CC&Rs, the HOA financials. Additionally, the seller typically pays for the HOA transfer fee that transfers ownership to the new buyer. If there are assessments, then the seller typically is responsible for any HOA assessments prior to close. Otherwise, HOA dues are prorated to the closing date. If they're paid in advance, then the seller again would receive a credit. If they're not, they'll be debited up to the closing date. Next is the county transfer tax, which is also called the documentary transfer tax. It's basically a county sales tax that the county charges the seller $1.10 per thousand of the sale price. So if the property sells for $1 million, then the tax is $1,100. The good news is costs associated with the preparation phase are determined by how much you're willing to spend, and the costs like repairs, cleaning, painting, and staging are all entirely in your control. Some of the other fees associated with closing the transaction will actually depend on the sale price of the home, such as title, insurance, escrow fees, and real estate commissions. The biggest swing in these seller costs can be repairs or credit for repairs. That being said, we would highly recommend setting aside 6.5% to 8% of the home sale price to account for both categories of closing costs. Now, typically we provide our clients with an estimate of closing costs without the preparation costs when we initially meet. It's during the pre-marketing phase that the inspections are done, like the termite or the sewer lateral, that we have a realistic figure. Otherwise, if you would like help with calculating your closing costs or prepare a closing cost estimate, let us know by phone or text. And as always, if you like this video, give us a thumbs up. Thanks.